David, a man that you know very well, Glenn Ferguson, one of the finest Irish League players of all time, did a very interesting interview with Graham Linney of the Belfast Telegraph earlier in the week, where he talked about his concerns and his fears for the finances in the Irish League. Things have changed a great deal, even in the short time it's been since you've no longer been managing the league, David. We've seen Kenny Bruce come in at Larne and spend a lot of money, Ali Poor at Glentoran, Henry Ross at Coleraine, and Cliftonville are in the middle of a takeover, and Crusaders are considering their options, and there's all sorts of chat about other clubs considering their options in terms of takeovers. But Glenn raised the point that he's fearful that you could see a club overspend and a club go out of business, and we know from experience that has happened in the past here, but more recently League of Ireland clubs have had great financial troubles. Do you share Glenn's fears?
Before I just talk about what Glenn shared with us, let me remind people about the greatness of Glenn Ferguson. When Brian McLaughlin and I were at Windsor, in our first full year, we came second. In our second full year, we came second in the Premiership. And I remember sort of thinking, we need something else. We need somebody else if we're going to get across the line. There's no such thing as a one-man team. I've said that on many occasions, but there is such a thing as one man makes a team. And I will never forget securing the signature of Glenn Ferguson. Thanks, by the way, to the European first European Linfield Supporters Club, who loaned Linfield the money to pay the £55,000 to Glenavon to bring Glenn Ferguson to Linfield Football Club. And that money was probably one of the best investments in any individual that you could ever wish for. This was a gentleman who came and absolutely, totally transformed Linfield Football Club. The success that was enjoyed during that wonderful period, the massive, massive part that Glenn Ferguson played can never be understated, and I will forever be grateful to him on a personal note. Never mind how Linfield Football Club should be forever indebted. And he's a gentleman who has then gone on, he's the head of academy, and you've only got to look at the number of young players who have gone across to England. In fact, the number of young players who are in the international squad who were part of his academy. So this is someone who was an outstanding player, and not just at Ards or Glenavon and Laterally Distillery, but primarily at Linfield Football Club. This man is not just a Linfield legend, he is an Irish League legend. Of that there's no doubt, and could have played in any era. So when he talks about sustainability and he talks about the possibility of a club going out of business, I think it's a pretty reasonable suggestion and opinion. Because for me, we've talked about Mr. Kenny Bruce, Mr. Ali Poor, Mr. Henry Ross. We've talked about Mr. Chris Smith down at Carrick Rangers. We're looking at potentially Cliftonville and Crusaders as well, who are looking at an investment. Linfield Football Club are looking at an investment. And I suppose the first point is, in terms of going forward and sustainability, it's how much money do these gentlemen have, and how much are they going to be willing to continue to put into football clubs. And that's why when Glenn talked about due diligence, he was quite right. You really need to make sure that the clubs aren't put at risk. We go back to the days of Cliftonville. We're nearly out of business. Coleraine, we're nearly out of business. There's a number of clubs, who were, you talked about down south, who were boom and bust. My fear is that the wages are getting greater and greater and greater, that the players, with respect, are expecting more and more and more. And I wonder who's going to continue to feed that, because ultimately there are only so many places in Europe and to begin to make money or recoup money. I think Glenn made a very good point. When you look at Larne and the first team to get to the group stages of a European, competition, the monies that were made from that, and yet they posted, I think, over 3/4 of 750,000 of losses, something massive. So I would share the opinion that we need to be, that it wouldn't surprise me if it happened, but I think we need to be. I would be taking it as a warning. And I think, Keith, as well, it's not just about pinholing the investors and saying, okay, well, how much are you going to continue to put in, and for how long are you going to continue to do that? You look at the Larne situation. Mr. Bruce has moved on. There are new owners who have come in, so you would think that that investment will continue. Maybe not to the same, maybe not to the same degree, but it's also a big responsibility for me on NIFL. It's about how clubs are supported and helped, in terms of what standards are being set for investors, in terms of what resources they should have, is that being looked at? So it's a very, it's a tasty, issue at the moment. Lots of people are saying, the league hasn't been better, all of the improvements. I see lots more money coming in. But I was asked a question actually at a men's group that I was at, is it any better than it was back in the day? And I sometimes wonder, if I'm being truthfully honest, and I'm not one of those old codgers who are looking back fondly or romantically, but I'm trying to work out how is it better, and how low, what's better. And the thing that jumps out at me, well, there's more money about the game, but I'm wondering how much better the football is.
It's a fair question, David. You mentioned NIFL there. They obviously had the salary protocol, which you'll remember from your time at Ballymena. Yeah. It was axed basically during COVID and not brought back. There is a new financial fair play system coming into play where clubs will be expected to break even over a number of seasons, and that's important because Irish League clubs collectively lost over 5 million in the previous year. So we welcome those developments. It'll take time to see whether they really make an impact or not.
But I suppose, Keith, it's where I'm bouncing back is that Crusaders looked at investment, rejected it. I can't really remember the name of the group that came in. Arama. They're now looking at that again. We've had the situation up at Solitude where I think it's been described as almost toxic now, and I wrote about it last week because all I would want is for the supporters, the members, those who are on the board to come together, but just because of the history of and the community base that Cliftonville are, and I suppose it's about. For me, would there be something that NIFL would look at in terms of a fit for purpose? That, we're asking clubs to do due diligence, and there's part of me which is, that's vitally important.
Well, there's a fit and proper owner test in the Football League in England.
That's what I'm alluding to, and I'm just wondering, would it be helpful to the club that, NIFL is our governing body, it is the overseer, it's the protector, so to speak, and I'm just wondering, would it be time, to bring in some sort of fit for purpose, test that goes alongside, clubs doing their due diligence. I would be happier and feel more secure, if we had that development, Keith.
Here's a question for you, David. In your playing day, you were part-time, you had a full career and your management career. That's changed nowadays, and there's the top clubs in our league are now full-time professional, which has been great, and I think has improved the standard to a certain degree. But is our league and is Northern Ireland big enough to sustain full-time football?
Again, it's about where are we going to get the money from? And I could bang on about that all day. This has not been going on totally left field, Keith, but please go with me in this. Last weekend, I was able to take in the Bangor Coleraine game. And also as well on a screen the Dungannon Larne game. Now Coleraine, their investment, the quality of the players and the journey are on, lots of credit have got to be given. Well,
Coleraine and Larne are both full time. Yeah. Dungannon and Bangor are both part time, and the part time teams both won.
What I'm trying to get, and that's exactly the point. And maybe it'll only be 7 times out of 10 or 8 times out of 10 that they will win. But last week, it wasn't about Coleraine not being up to the mark, although Rory Higgins will disagree with me, or Larne not being up to the mark, and Gary Havern will disagree with me. It was about the quality of the performances of both Bangor and of Dungannon. And let's not forget, Bangor went down to 10 men for a decision which I still can't get my head around in terms of the two yellows. But Bangor were superb. So for all of the money, for all of the investment, and for all of the number of clubs who are full time, still on any given and any particular day, upsets can be created. So to go back to your question, can we as a small country, support a full-time league? I don't think so. But in saying that, last weekend gave me so much hope in terms of going forward. Now, come Christmas is when we sit down and look at the table and see where things are really at. It will be interesting to see where the four proper full-time teams are. How are they progressing? Have they pulled away? But if anything showed me last weekend, that if players have the right attitude, and I'm talking about the players from the part-time clubs who are prepared to do their 2 or 3 nights a week, who are prepared to look after themselves and take care of themselves, and are prepared to go out with a belief and a desire, then anything is possible. So simply, no, I don't think we are big enough to fund a full-time league. I don't know where on earth we would get the money, but that's not for us to dump full-time football. I wouldn't want to see that happen either. It's here, and it'll be as long as people be here, as long as people want to invest in it. But I think it makes for wonderful watching, wonderful viewing, and as I say, last week in particular was absolutely amazing.